there's no evidence that guys who eat soy have increase in or decrease in testosterone levels, or it changes their hormones at all.
Welcome everybody to Hustle Fit Nation. We are on our interview series. I have a really special guest. It is Andy De Santis. He's a private practicing dietitian, author, speaker. I consider him a food comedian. I've seen his Instagram. It's hilarious. And I've never been so entertained while being educated. So, I mean, that is actually a very unique thing that you have going. And just somebody with a lot of great knowledge. And that's why we pretty much decided to get in touch with you and get some questions answered. So how are you doing, basically?
Yeah, I'm doing good. And we just had a little chat about this. I'm doing relatively good, all things considered. I can't really complain, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a totally different environment. I mean, a whole nother place and everything like that. So, I mean, yeah. And a question for you, though. One of the things I wanted to know was, how did you get started as a dietitian? And then what made you decide to bridge the gap with comedy and being a dietitian? Those two things have got me interested about you.
Yeah. Well, how do I get started as a dietitian? I think it's like it's kind of the cliche that you probably hear a lot in like health and fitness. I think, when I was younger, I wasn't super healthy, and I kind of realized that my quality of life wasn't that good, and I started to learn about what it meant to be healthy, and I realized, like to do it yourself, to learn by yourself was really, really hard. And then I grew passionate about it, and I'm like, all right, I got to do this for a career, because I mean, if I can help someone not take 10 years to figure out what it means to be healthy, which is what I went through. You know what I mean? I used to think that power bars were healthy when I was a teenager, like that, and I had to eat all power bars all day because on the label they had all the vitamins and minerals, right? So I wasn't raised necessarily to be like a food maven. So yeah, I literally just went through that my own hardships, and I kind of realized, I want to do this. And the humor stuff came way later, right? Because then I did my school, worked, and then eventually I ended up doing my own thing. And I used social media to help me increase my visibility. And even at the beginning of social media, I wasn't even really doing any jokes. And then eventually, I do fancy myself like a reasonably funny person. I mean, I guess it depends who you ask. And I just saw the opportunity to start, doing some like borderline questionable jokes, but that were always rooted in something related to nutrition. You know what I mean? And so like, and I link my jokes with my blogs because I love writing, and somehow I kind of landed on something that worked and that was different, and kind of just rode with it.
Wow, that's like a journey actually, like in terms of how you got it and put it together. And then, that's pretty cool though. So you basically mixed all of your different personality skill sets, your love of nutrition and the fact that you were kind of a funny guy. I can attest to that. Some of the jokes you got me, especially there was one that was about the calcium and the D that I love.
Oh, that one. Yeah, that's one of my classics. Yeah, it's a classic. Yeah.
That would have been used so much in high school if
It's not easy coming up with those either. Like, you know what? Like, it's not easy coming up with that stuff. You gotta sit down. I have like creative sessions, like artists go in the studio and they like come up with lyrics. I go on my chair. I come up with the jokes. So it's an art.
That is an art, man. That was unique. I was like, geez, that would have got some numbers back in the day. That was good. And so you got into nutrition. You kind of you got into this whole perspective and everything. What do you? So my story is I was an average financial planner. I was unhealthy. I was overweight, and I realized I had to make a big change. But I know that a lot of people I connect with and with Hustle and Fit is that there are people that are like busy professionals and stuff like that. How does the average person, not like a professional athlete or a fitness model, stay healthy and do the right things? Like, what are the strategies and tips you would say are the best things for them to be working on?
Yeah. Well, I would start off if I just saw someone on the street, I said, and I'm like, I'm never going to see you again. Like, I can give you a few things to think about. You know what I mean? I think probably if I could only tell them one thing besides like eat your vegetables, right? Which is almost like everybody knows that. I would tell people to reconsider how much protein, so I'm going to say it. Reconsider how much protein you get from animals and how much protein you get from plants, and see if you could modify that ratio. Because most people, in my experience, who I encounter, their protein intake is really high from animals and not so high from plant-based foods. And although there's nothing wrong with eating animal protein. I think good health comes by like leveling that ratio out and relying more on plant-based foods that have protein than you do on animal-based foods that have protein. And, you know, so whether it's legumes, which are like lentils and chickpeas and tofu, or nuts and seeds, or even fish, which is not plant-based, but fish is unique as well, because it has the vitamin D, the omega-3s, changing that ratio from the conventional stuff like your chicken and beef. You know what I mean? Think about that ratio. And if I can only tell someone one thing to think about, I would tell them that. Now, obviously, like there's way more beyond that, but that's probably the number one piece of advice that I give people. I think that's the number one piece of advice I can give to like the quote unquote average person in terms of thinking about what they're doing health wise.
So basically getting in that more of the veggies in and really understanding how it affects the macronutrients are the main thing, like balancing it out and stuff like that. So for someone like myself, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a pretty big meat eater. I did recently see the Netflix movie, and it did make me think a little bit. So how much of that is real and how much of that is like false? I know veggies are important, but like, how do you know, what's the difference between fact and fiction? Like, how accurate is, like, am I going to become an expert athlete just by eating vegetables? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what?
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, first of all, for sure they took some liberty. So it's the Game Changers documentary. That's the one you're talking about, I think.
Yeah,
right?
the Netflix
version, yeah. So I wrote a blog on that. So I encourage anyone to like type in my name, type in Andy and the Game Changers on Google. I probably will come up, or Andy De Santis on the Game Changers. But basically, this is what I say. Like, what they took is a good premise, like the idea that, yeah, we could probably all benefit from eating less meat on some level, like, but they took it to the extreme, right? Because they wanted to push that message. So as a result, they took a lot of liberties, and like not everything they said was scientifically accurate, right? So you can't necessarily say that if you take a really high level athlete who has a very balanced and strong diet and you convert them to being a vegan, that their performance is going to improve. That's what they made it look like. You know what I mean? Yeah. Now, what I think is true, though, is, like I said earlier, is that if you can take a person and you can kind of play with their intake of plant and animal protein, there's benefits to be had there. Because a lot of people don't explore the plant-based protein world because there's a lot of fiber, there's a lot more antioxidants, you know what I mean, in the plant-based proteins. Again, legumes, nuts and seeds primarily, soy products, you know what I mean? There's something unique in those foods. Again, the fiber and the antioxidant content that's not in other animal-based sources. So it's like when you level that out, there's a good chance that the quality of your diet will increase, and you will feel better, and you will have a chance. You have an opportunity potentially. If you feel better, your body works better. You could always perform better. But you know, there's a lot of gold medal athletes who are omnivores, right? So it's like you know, they have an agenda they were trying to push. Yeah. The message at its core, I think, is good. But obviously, they took liberties with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I kind of got that feeling. It did make me think, though. I won't lie, like because the way they went in depth on all the benefits, like down the road, I was like, okay, I know I would get healthier, but I never thought of like all these little other things, like your sex drive, your everything. Like I didn't realize how much it affected. And then I thought about the environmental factors. I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting as well. But that was the big thing, and that's the thing. So I'm realizing now too is you got to add in those veggies and kind of. But I think the question I feel like with myself personally is how to do it like correctly, because I almost feel like I'm not really pushing the ratio correctly in it. You know what I mean? I'm like, I got the veggies in, but I don't feel like I'm doing it like at the right level. Like someone with, like what would you say you should be doing, or what are some tricks? What are the tricks you would say to get yourself to really enjoy your meal? I guess I don't know. I don't know if I'm asking it correctly. Like to spice it up a little bit so that you're not so stuck on I really need this chicken. But if I add a little bit of something to this kale or whatever, like what can I be doing to spice up the?
Right. Well, okay. I'm gonna say a few things. The first thing I'm gonna say is, so this is for everyone who's listening and for yourself. If you don't know how to make a day where you get 100 grams of protein without meat, without an animal product, that should concern you. Okay, that's the first thing I'm gonna say. That should concern you because you should, even if you never do it, you should know how. Okay, that's number one. Number two is like, okay, one of the most underestimated and the most like kind of misunderstood foods is tofu. Okay, tofu is very economical, very healthy, and very versatile. Okay, you can do a lot of things with tofu. A brick of tofu, like 50 grams of protein, costs about $2 Canadian. Okay, that's like peanuts. It has the same amount of protein. It has more protein than 6 eggs. Okay. And it comes from soybeans, right? Plant-based protein, good for you. Antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, all that good stuff. Now, there's a lot of tofu recipes out there. So I encourage people, and the thing is, people are scared of tofu, but for no good reason. And we can talk about that if you want. I write a lot about soy for that reason. Tofu, I think, for a lot of people is the key because it can replicate what you can do with meat. It's the closest thing. Like lentils are not a replacement for a steak, okay? But there are things you can do with tofu, for example, that are more similar to what you can do with a chicken or a fish or a beef, okay? So that's one thing I would consider. And the other thing I would consider is, honestly, think about the vegetables that you've only ever eaten in a restaurant that you've never made for yourself, okay? This is, for me, one of those was bok choy. Now, I had at a restaurant a bunch of times, never cooked it for myself, never bought it. One day I decided to say, even as a dietitian, right? I said, F that, I'm going to start cooking bok choy. Never looked back, okay?
Yeah, it's really tasty.
You gotta ask yourself, what foods do I know are good for me or that I've had elsewhere that I've never had at home? What can I bring that into my life? Can I take myself to the next level by trying that? So I encourage everyone to ask themselves that question. And these are the kind of questions I ask my clients to think about, because the best answers, funny enough, are the ones that you have for yourself on some level. You know what I mean?
That makes sense, actually. Wow, that's really good. Actually, that's a really good point. And I never even thought about that with. And I think one of the biggest concerns, I think I have a personal trainer or like somebody that mentioned it to me, that they're worried about like they mentioned something about it was something
phytoestrogens maybe.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So that was like the big concern. Okay, so what do you say about that then with the
I'm ready to talk about this.
Because I'm curious too. I'm really curious.
Okay, so this is what happens, okay? So soy does have compounds known as phytoestrogens. Okay, that's correct. That's true. So basically, this is what you need to know. So phytoestrogen is like a very, very, very weak version of estrogen, which is the female sex hormone. Okay, so phytoestrogens work at around 1/200th of the capacity of estrogen. Okay, so if there's 200 opportunities in the body for estrogen to work, 199 times, these phytoestrogens are going to have no role to play. So that's like points. So they're going to only be relevant like 0.05% of the time. That's like if you shoot 200, I don't know, like, okay, the Last Dance documentary is popular. I was watching that. You shoot 200 free throws, you only hit one. Are you going to be worried about if that play you're coming up against that player on the basketball court? Like, not really. You know what I mean? That's like the level that phytoestrogens can act like estrogen in your body, like nothing. Okay, there's no evidence that guys who eat soy have increase in or decrease in testosterone levels, or it changes their hormones at all. Okay, all of the evidence around soy intake is actually that it's protective. It lowers risk of things, prostate cancer potentially. Lowers cholesterol, which is a big one. So soy is very effective at lowering cholesterol for two reasons. Number one, it helps you eat less meat. And number two is because there's something about soy in the compounds that lower your cholesterol levels. Now, you talked about sexual health a second ago. High cholesterol is a leading risk factor for like erectile dysfunction. So, high cholesterol usually comes from animal products. Okay. So you see, it's a kind of convoluted, like people have this view that actually testosterone, like soy is going to like reduce their hormones or sex life, but it's actually the opposite is true. Okay. You won't find a reputable source or human studies that tell you to the opposite. You're never going to go on Harvard's website and find an article that says don't eat soy. Now you might get some random person's blog that says that for sure.
Right. Yeah,
you know what I mean? But you can't take what one person says as a gospel. You know what I mean? You have to look at the evidence. And so obviously, like even for myself included, I encourage you to find the human evidence that tells me that eating soy is gonna affect you negatively. Because I've been writing about soy for years, and I haven't found it. Okay.
Wow. That's big. That's a big misconception. That's a very big, because I think I've heard a couple people bring that up.
Everyone has that misconception. All my clients. That's why I write about it so much, because it's out there. It's like pervasive. So
yeah. What other misconceptions are out there that that's leading people down the wrong path? What would you say, like a couple more like that?
Well, like, okay, well, soy is probably it's one of the biggest. I mean, obviously, soy is the biggest one that's kind of hidden. The other ones are more out in the open, right? There's so much about carbs and fruit and sugar. Those ones are out in the open. You know what I mean? Like that's probably the other one. But in terms of ones that people might not think about as much or might not assess critically, soy is probably number one. And then people get caught up in the world of vitamins and minerals and the idea that they need to take this and that, and they think they need that to be healthy. But carbs, keto, sugars, but soy is the one for me that I always jumps out, and it's like, no, 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 you got it wrong. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Of course, carbs can be controversial as well because the keto diet is rising in popularity.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
What,
but yeah.
what's your perspective on all these like fad diets, like these big, like I mean, is there a universal ultimate diet that's out there, or is that just make believe it's the same grassroots strategy that's always been around? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think humans are like we like to experiment and we're like curious, right? So if like there's a way of eating that might offer us better health and a longer life, like perhaps we're always looking for it. And a lot of it has to do with things that resonate with us. If we read something that's like, "Ooh, yeah, this like resonates with me," like you may already be gone. Because for example, if I have a female client who reads that soy is going to increase her risk of breast cancer, it may be too late because that's such a powerful thing to read. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
It
I
may be
see what you mean.
and I understand that. And if you read somewhere that intermittent fasting is going to add 10 years to your life, and by the way, I'm into intermittent fasting. I've written a book on it that's coming out next month. But
Oh,
like
nice.
if you read that, even though there's no evidence to prove that, that's a really big claim. If you read that, you like might be stuck on fasting forever. You know what I mean? And so on
Yeah.
and so forth. So it's fascinating. It's
What
fascinating.
made that's another big trend. What made you decide to get into intermittent fasting, and what are the benefits? Because I'm just seeing a lot about intermittent fasting all the time.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I do it personally is just because, so I'm like, well, how old? I'm 32 right now, okay? And
Wow.
I'm busier, right, than I used to be when I was younger, and like I can't eat as much as I used to when I was younger, but I don't like to eat a little bit of food. I like to eat a lot. So the only way I can eat a lot of food is if I, don't eat 100 times a day. Okay.
Mm,
So I started doing fasting because it just worked for my life. And as I got busier, it actually just worked from a practical perspective because I'm not the kind of guy who likes to meal prep, bring lunch to work. So I do it purely for my quality of life and for my enjoyment. I don't do it telling myself that this is vital to my health because I do believe that what you eat is always going to be the most important thing, not necessarily how you eat, right?
mm,
But but there but there's a lot of people who might resonate with that, for example. You know what I mean?
right.
Potentially. But the thing with intermittent fasting is like it's still in its infancy. Okay,
Mm,
that's the thing. It's like we do have a lot of evidence that or some evidence, some human evidence that, for example, it changes a little bit of how your metabolism works. Some scientists say it's like a low level of stress on your cells that makes them stronger. So it's almost like a workout, right, for your
mm,
cells. You know
interesting.
what I mean? Think of it like a workout for your cells. And then there's this concept of like when you fast, it induces a state where your weaker cells kind of get recycled and renewed. And so that it's like cellular revitalization. So some scientists kind of believe in that train of thought. This stuff is hard to prove in humans because like it requires a certain level of evidence. But these are the ideas that are kind of growing. You know what I mean? Of course, some people pursue fasting because it helps them lose weight. It can help you reduce. It can help you increase or reduce your insulin resistance, which is relevant for blood sugar management and for diabetes. And so there's all sorts of stuff. There's a doctor from Toronto, Dr. Jason Fung, who is using it to treat type 2 diabetes in an experimental fashion. Right
Wow.
now, I'm not saying like look, I'm not saying that it's a treatment for type 2 diabetes, but he
You're
really
trying,
believes in it.
right.
So the research I think is in its infancy, but there's enough there that I think in 10 years, if I had to bet, it's gonna come out to be like there's gonna be more to it than what we know right now.
So I got to start reading. I'm
Yeah.
going to start off with your book, and then
I got
start.
some blogs on it too, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll be reading up on that big piece. And another big thing that also came up, and I wanted to ask quickly about this one before we close up, is
Yeah.
I hear a lot about inflammation. That's always a buzzword that's also popping up all the time. What is that about, and how does that, like, what are we doing with that, and what is the big thing about the inflammation, and then why does that come up all the time?
Yeah, well, I think inflammation is definitely a big buzzword. I think what like the scientific community is realizing is like a lot of the things that go wrong with our body on some level are rooted in inflammation. Now, inflammation is like a natural response, right? Like our bodies, the inflammation response is a response to, like foreign particles and stuff like that. It's protective in the short term, but chronic inflammation, which can occur, whether it's from a poor diet, whether it's from too many bad environmental exposures like pollution, whether it's from like overtraining, chronic inflammation is damaging. You know what I mean? And so even though it can arise from all these different factors, at the end result on some level is probably chronic inflammation. Now, there's a lot of things we can do with our diet to reduce that. You know what I mean? The most classical example is the omega-3 fatty acids that you find in fish and flax seeds and walnuts. Those have a pretty well-known anti-inflammatory capacity. But the reality is there's a whole wide array of foods. Again, your fruits and vegetables, your nuts and seeds, your legumes, your herbs and spices, these foods have all sorts of different anti-inflammatory compounds in them that have a net positive effect on your body. And on top of that, you also have your gut bacteria, right, which are a huge part of your immune system and play a role in that and kind of fighting back against inflammation. And when you eat a wide variety of foods, so there's two things that are important for health. There's eating the right foods, and then within each category of foods is getting enough variety, because our gut bacteria, they like variety. Different types of fibers are different types of food for them. The more variety they have, the stronger they're going to be, the stronger and more like regulated our immune response is going to be, and then the lower the state of inflammation in our body. You know what I mean? That's like a very simplistic definition. I took a few liberties there, but that's like a decent way to think about it. You know what I mean?
So it is a very big, important topic and so forth. And you're saying that diet it can play a very big role in reducing inflammation overall.
Well, yeah, it plays a fundamental role, right? Because a poor diet is linked with higher state of inflammation, and a strong diet is linked with a lower state of inflammation. There's no question, and that has to do for a variety of reasons.
Makes sense. Oh, that's awesome, man! Andy, you dropped some really good bombs there. I can see why. I know it's awesome, and on it, I want to say thank you so much for spending time with us. It's been amazing. It's very enlightening. There's a lot of things that you kind of has made me think differently myself personally. One question I'd have for you, the last one is, what from a health perspective, what do you want people to know? What's the one thing you want to leave this world with when it comes to their health and fitness? What would be the one thing that you want to leave them with?
Oh, that's tough, because there's so many things I could choose. If I had to choose one, I think okay, I'll say this. I'm not going to make it relate to nutrition, because I think there's a lot of people out there that whose quality of life is suffering, not because of nutrition, but because they put so much pressure on themselves as it relates to food. So I would honestly say is give yourself a bit of a break. You don't have to be perfect when it comes to your diet, because I see so many people, and obviously I'm always pushing good health, good nutrition. But the more people I work with, the more people I see who have had a hard time, have had a tough relationship with food, and it hurts to see that. And so I would say just give yourself a little bit of give yourself a break when it comes to how you criticize yourself. Take a step back and ask yourself, if it was a friend telling you about what they did, would you be harsh to them? Would you criticize them? Don't criticize yourself if you know what I mean? Something on that level, because we have so much nutrition advice out there, and perhaps not enough advice about giving yourself a break, especially now during this crazy time. You know what I mean? So I guess I would go with that if I had to choose one, because I already said the plant-based message earlier.
Yeah. So, no, I got you on that one. No, but that's really good. That's actually very important. And where can people find you? If we want to reach out to you and stuff like that. And what are you working on?
Yeah. Well, basically, okay, so you can find me on Instagram. So at Andy the RD. So it's ANDYTHERD. So RD just stands for registered dietitian, right? So it's Andy the RD, but it really means Andy the registered dietitian. So find me on Instagram, find the jokes there. My website, andytherd.com. Check out my blog. There's years of my hard work on there in terms of my info. And you can, on Amazon, I got my books. You type my name in Amazon, my books will come up. I'm writing a lot of books right now. You know, I got a book on fasting coming out next month. I got 3 or 4 more books coming out over the next 12 months. So yeah, there's something for everyone out there, and you probably can get them some of my old ones pretty cheap on Kindle or something now. So go ahead and check them out. Or you might even find me at Indigo if you're in Toronto. Actually, wait, stores are closed, so scratch that part. But yeah, scratch that. Eventually, find me on Indigo. You'll find me at Indigo. Maybe one of my books maybe is on Indigo's shelf. Like they've one of them somewhere. So yeah,
awesome, man. Andy, thank you once again. It's been awesome. You've been a great guest. Information was awesome. And everybody, you need to check out Andy. He knows his stuff. It's really funny and it's amazing. So make sure you go check him out. Thank you so much, Andy.